All right, Joe House is here. It is almost 9:15 here Pacific time on the West Coast. House stayed up past midnight on the East Coast. House, I apologize. Usually when we were growing up, NBA playoff games were like 2 hours, 20 minutes, 2 hours, 30 minutes. This one was over 3 hours. There was a ref review every 5 seconds, but it ended up with an amazing ending. The Suns, 0.8 seconds left on the clock, alley-oop to Deandre Ayton, as everybody thinks, wait, was that goaltending? And it's like, no, you can't have goaltending. It's not a shot. It's a live ball. So the Suns end up winning, and I think we call it it's either the alley-oop or the Ayton-oop. What do you like more?
I like the alley-oop. That's better.
The alley-oop. So
the alley-oop.
The Suns and Clippers, they played in 2006. It's the closest the Clippers have ever really come to making the finals, because that season was wide open, and there was this famous Daniel Ewing game where Game 4, they're about to take a 3-1 lead over the Suns. They're down 3. The Suns are down 3. Timeout. Dunleavy brings in Daniel Ewing, who stands a little... Yeah, my old guy Dunleavy.
Your old buddy, Mike Dunleavy.
And he's too far away from Raja Bell, now belonging to the Ringer.
Foe.
And Raja makes the 3, goes into overtime. Suns win. This felt equally devastating. I felt like the Clips had to steal one of these two with no Chris Paul. I know no Kawhi either, but to now go down 0-2, Chris Paul is eventually coming back. This was a devastating Clippers loss.
I don't think it was devastating necessarily, because this Clippers team, in the configuration that they have, I think they have kind of the resiliency to come back from a 2-0 down. We keep seeing this out of Ty Lue. Like, they're playing a long game. This series feels to me like a 7-game series, and all of the mixing and matching with lineups to address on the fly, not having Kawhi. I think there's a kind of an experiment going on here, and I'm not prepared to make any declarations about the ultimate outcome of this. Like, the Clippers had 10 ways to win this game. The Suns had 10 ways to win this game. This was a classic game 2 between two deep teams. It was a rock fight. The role players took over in the fourth quarter. We got tons of Patrick Beverley. We got tons of Luke Kennard. We got who from the Suns was doing stuff right at the end that I'm forgetting.
Well, I mean, Cameron Payne had 29 points in the game.
Campaign.
I'll say this. I agree with you. The Clips have been down 0-2 every round now. I'm not counting them out. I think why this was devastating was this game was on the platter for you're up 1, you get fouled. Paul George is at the line with a chance to put it 3, misses both. And now the Suns could say, well, we were down 1 and Booker dribbled the ball out of bounds. We did a review, and by 1/100th of a split second in super slow-mo, it was clear that even though Beverly poked the ball out, it kind of went off Booker's hand. I hated that call. We can talk about it later. But the Clips, you just feel like you have 2 free throws to basically clinch the game. You don't get them. You get a stop on the inbound pass, and Bridges misses the 3 from the corner, wide open set play. And then you don't get the rebound. And then on top of everything else, it's clear the only play they have a chance to run there is Ayton alley-oop. You bring Cousins in. Cousins isn't even positioned properly between the inbounder and the alley-oop pass.
And the basket. I couldn't agree more. So he gets like
a free look right at the rim, and then Ayton, it's like one pick. Of course that was going to be the play.
There is a whole, and I really don't care to do this because I'd like the last half hour of my life back. That game should have been over at 11:30 at night Eastern.
Yeah.
We didn't need the extra 35 minutes. And the parade of horribles that occurred in that last 2 minutes of actual basketball time is too numerous. I don't want to relive the sequence, but the observation you made just now about Cousins being in the wrong spot, about the fact that the Clippers again asked for a review of the out-of-bounds play, which have had the effect of giving the Suns the ability to go diagram the
fake
play.
timeout.
With 8/10 left, they didn't have to do that, but that's the clip. Hey, well, we were successful with it one time. Let's get another review and give the Suns another free timeout. And on top of that, how can Zubac not be prepared for the back screen? How could he not be prepared for Ayton going to the basket? How is it possible he got back screen?
And once again, like with the Daniel Ewing play, they bring in the ice cold DeMarcus Cousins, to defend the inbounds pass, and he's not in the right spot.
Not in the right
Hey,
spot.
DeMarcus, you have to be between the inbounder and the basket so they can't throw an alley-oop. That's why you're in there.
And so the inbounder doesn't have the perfect look at the basket. At least put your big body and your big arms in front of his eyes, for Christ's sakes.
And then
but the whole thing was infuriating.
And Zubac gets blindsided by the back pick. This was a really chippy game. I loved it. It reminded me
too.
When we were in college, when there was those weird 89, 90, when there were all these weird playoff matchups all of a sudden, but all the games were great. You'd have like Phoenix, Portland, and Portland, San Antonio, and these matchups were like, wow, this is a playoff series, and they were always awesome.
I mean, it was a Pat Bev kind of game, right? I mean, Pat Bev was out there putting his face into places and flopping, and we got the full Pat Beverly experience.
He got shoved by Devin Booker after the Ayton alley-oop.
Yes.
It seemed like all chaos broke. And Booker, they were trash talking the whole game, and Booker just ended up shoving him away. But it was super chippy. And I got to say, like, I'm with you. I don't think this series is over. But I was really surprised the Clippers lost. You and I live bet the Clippers in
we did.
Third quarter. It was like almost 3-1. Maybe we're partially to blame for it, but it just felt like the kind of game that they would steal all year. And I think when I look at this Clipper team, you mentioned about the different lineups and stuff. There's a Isaiah's Pistons-y kind of feel to the team. I'm not talking from a talent standpoint, but
depth.
They go 9-10 deep, and you kind of, from series to series, different guys evolve into crunch time people. Like today, we had Beverly, Kennard, and Zubac are all playing in crunch time. And in the previous series, Kennard basically didn't play at all until game 5, game 6. And Zubac wasn't out there ever. But in this series, it's a malleable lineup. Paul George is really the only constant in Kawhi, but Kawhi's been out. But it's basically, we have Paul George. We have no idea who the other 4 people are going to be game to game, series to series. And Lou has a really good feel for the roster. Like he did it again today. He had the right guys out there. They came back, took the lead. They should have won.
I totally agree with that. I have a question for you. I want to see if you agree with this. For some reason, even though this game, the shooting was not outstanding, it had a rock fight feel, it had a gritty feel. I don't know, my basketball eyes so prefer seeing this Western Conference, these games, than the Eastern Conference. The Eastern Conference games have been driving me insane. That the Bucks and the Nets and the Hawks and the Sixers, there's so many dumb mistakes. There's so many missed opportunities. These games, this feels more like, I feel like there's strategy. I feel like, guys are getting an opportunity and making the most of the opportunity. And I don't know why the aesthetics of this appealed. If you look at the numbers, it's not like anybody had a great shooting night. And it's not like, we are missing Chris Paul and Kawhi Leonard, 2 first ballot Hall of Famers. And yet, for whatever reason, I prefer to watch this game than anything I've seen out of the Eastern Conference in the last 5 games.
One of the things I like, we were always so worried about basketball was becoming this uniform way to play, right? Where it was just like, all right, everybody just shoots threes and, you go a little hero ball at the end, and we don't have the variety that like we grew up with.
Yeah.
I think one of the reasons I like these 2 teams is they can go small. It's 2 Dirk Diggler teams, right? They can fuck fast. They can fuck slow.
I can do it both ways. Both ways.
Jack, should I use a Spanish accent?
I can do it both ways, Jack. How about the return of the mid-range? There's a mid-range game on both sides of the ball.
I think that's what we both like. There's shot making. Like they were talking, and Booker, who was bad today. Booker was 5 for 16.
This is what I'm saying. It's like
the Suns in general were 6 for 26 from 3.
Right. I know.
But they always, you hear like with Booker, like he gets to that spot. There's guys on both teams who are like, I'm going to get to that spot and shoot a 16-footer. You go in the East Coast, the Eastern Conference, just not as many of those guys.
He got to a spot and made his shot with whatever it was that, 10 seconds left or
27 seconds after.
There you go. That's what it was. I couldn't remember. But right, of course. I mean,
and Paul George, same thing.
A pure basketball play, and the exact same thing for Paul George. Although we got to call him, I got to give shouts to Cousin Sal. Playoff PU. You're at the free throw line with a chance to go up 3. You got to go. You got to make the free throws. I mean, you can't be playoff P and miss 2 free throws. It's
I'm going to
insane
defend playoff P because I thought he was awesome in the Utah series. I think he's carrying a huge load in these games. He played
That's
41
all true.
minutes again tonight. And by the way, I meant to say this on Sunday's pod. They got fucked with that game one on Sunday. Where they had to play the Friday night game. There was an open Monday night last night. They had no games. Like, guess what? You could have played
the game 7. Just have the game 7 Sunday night. Let that be the only game.
Yeah, and then play. And by the way, Sixers on Monday night.
The 3:00 game was on Father's Day up against the U.S. Open. I don't need to see game 1 of Suns Clippers up against the U.S. Open. I got to watch John Rahm.
I mean, can you imagine if they had done that to the Lakers and the Lakers had won this grueling game 6 on a Friday night and had to play 36 hours later in Phoenix? LeBron, the pity party that would have happened from LeBron. The league's cracking down on us again. It's like, oh, it's the Clippers. Let's just completely fuck them over. Hey, it was a real disadvantage. It was basically you're in a no-win situation in that game, which I think why they experimented. But tonight was the game they had to steal. And they didn't steal it. And they had it. It was sitting there. Really, from a Phoenix standpoint, Ayton had another great game, but I just think that might be who he is. He's shooting 60% for the entire playoffs. The one that is ridiculous is Cameron Payne goes 12 for 24, 29 points, 9 assists, and is basically like doing as well as Chris Paul would have done.
Well, and we had, on the other side in the previous series, Terrence Mann. We had the Terrence Mann game. I mean, this is what we're getting out of this Eastern Conference after Red Mamba himself brought home game 7 for Atlanta Sunday night. This is a very interesting playoffs. We're getting these role players who are getting opportunities to step up in like the biggest moments and then really following through. And we're seeing players with more notoriety that haven't been in giant playoff situations before kind of coming up with egg on their face. It's a really interesting playoffs in that respect. I wish we didn't have across the board all of the injuries, but like we're getting some litmus test moments here. Like we got a kind of a little more information about Aaron Gordon, I would say. It was interesting to see Drew Holiday shoot 5 for 23
and look terrified most of the series.
Yes, that's right. But
you left out. But don't forget Mr. Simmons on Philly.
Well, I mean, what's left to say? He basically should not have played any fourth quarter. And in fact, he didn't play any fourth quarter. He ran around. He was a live body running around.
You know what's shocking about this box score? Zubac played 34 minutes. So you think about last series. Basically, they went small against Gobert. They didn't care. They knew he wasn't going to hurt them. They're afraid enough against Ayton that they felt like they had to play Zubac most of the game. And Ayton still was 12 for 15. 14 rebounds and was the best player in the game. And we should talk about Ayton really quickly because even though we've talked about him before on the pod, it was a defensible pick over Luka. I never would have done it, but I understood it because it's like if this guy can turn into a semi-franchise center that could be a 2010 guy who can protect the rim in the playoffs, that's a really nice piece to have next to Booker. He's been better than I thought. He's incredibly likable. Even I watched the interview right after the game and he's just like, my coaches just told me what to do. All credit goes to them. It was a great pass by Jay. Every single word I've ever heard out of his mouth is like great teammate, super supportive, no ego at all, just wants to like help out. I think he really appreciates the Chris Paul thing. I think he loves playing with Booker and he's like the ideal third guy that you would want on a team that has those two guards. And I'm just stunned because I didn't see this coming 4 months ago. It just seemed like he was going to be not the Achilles heel, but kind of the wild card for them. It's like, do you trust him? Is he going to be in the right places in a playoff game? Is he going to fumble a perfect pass or any of that stuff? I think he's been lights out. I'm really impressed.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I'll give credit to both Ayton because there's definitely like a work ethic to that dude. He's definitely gotten better every year. There was a slow start for him and he had some missteps early on. But like, as he's grown, as the team has grown, as the franchise has grown, it is kind of a perfect confluence of events to put him in the very best position he could be in, Devin Booker in the very best position he could be in, Chris Paul, ironically, in the very best position he could be in. And that chemistry really works. And it's really having a nice cumulative effect on the overall, and they're deep. We keep talking about Mikal Bridges is good. He's a good two-way player.
And he wasn't good tonight, but he made a huge three in the last 2 minutes.
And the one that he took at the end of the game,
I thought it was going in.
It was online. Looked good to me. Payne is good. We made fun of Cam Johnson when he got picked. Cam Johnson's good. Cam Johnson has a high basketball IQ. I am impressed by this Suns team. You've been on them we've been talking about it for 3 months. You love this Suns team.
I know, but I was a coward. I didn't pick them against the Lakers. I could have. I went on the Sports Cards podcast and predicted, I was like, buy Trae Young cards. They have a real chance to make the Eastern Finals. And somehow didn't even really pick them to beat the Knicks. And then this Suns team, I was on the whole season and then I just got scared off. I think one of the things you saw tonight, they have a way of making the other team kind of come to their pace. Those Clips Jazz games were wide open. That's what the Clips want. They want to shoot threes. They want chaos. They want to scramble. And the Jazz, even with Cameron Payne, even without Chris Paul, they know who they are. They want to slow it down a tiny bit. They want it to be a half-court game, and they eventually pull you into that house. I got to give you this. We have some live odds on FanDuel Sportsbook.
Let's get on them.
Clippers in 6 is now 20-1. Clippers in 7 is now 11-1.
Oh, I'm going to bet that. I'm 100%. Get on that. Call somebody for me.